Good morning, everyone. It is Saturday and it's time for short takes and updates. I am Joy Jarman-Walsh based in Hiroshima.
Hi there, I'm Tove Kinooka based in Yokohama, just outside Tokyo.
Yeah, this is great to catch up again this week. It's been a very busy week for you. You had webinars and events. I've been keeping busy as well. So we're going to talk about what we've been up to, some of the news that's been on our radar, and I've got some great Christmas sustainable shopping tips as well I want to add.
Brilliant.
Tove, you want to start with the webinar that you were part of?
Right. So on Tuesday, we did a webinar with our partners, NWorld Executive Search. And we were talking about sort of a wrap up of the year, really. So what are the big trends or shifts that we've noticed through sort of 2021 in regards to people in sustainability, and what do we think sort of is coming up for the year ahead, and how are organizations going to need to respond to that? So
wow, interesting. And I wrote on LinkedIn, is there going to be a public link? And apparently there is one coming soon.
Yes, we're just working on editing the video now, and we should be able to get that out early next week. That's the plan.
I think that's great theme, because often sustainability, the whole idea is only on planet, only on the environment side, but having focus on people, because of course we're not going to make things happen for the planet side without getting people involved. And the planet side definitely affects people. So people are an important part of the equation,
all
right?
All integrated.
Yes.
And what we were sort of particularly looking at is if organizations are now getting really serious about sustainability, which many of them are, which is fantastic, long overdue, they're having to suddenly build teams or roles, sustainability departments perhaps, or people are having to take on responsibility for sustainability initiatives within the company. So we were looking at, what kind of things do they need to be able to do those jobs well? What should companies be looking for? Because it seems that some companies go out with this wish list of, okay, we're going to have a chief sustainability officer. They need to have this resume with all these things. And very few people tick all of those boxes. Nobody knows everything about this topic, right? It's huge. You've got the whole reporting side, the ESG side. You've got to understand supply chain, issues and so on. It's huge, and nobody's an expert really in all of it. So, a lot of companies had that kind of wish list, but then are realizing actually nobody is out there to do this. So in that case, what do we need to be looking for? So we had a discussion around that, and hopefully we'll be able to share the video soon and people can have a look if they're interested.
That sounds really exciting. I've been working on a project recently, which hopefully I'll be able to announce next month, but working on how businesses can better communicate to the customers about the good work that they're doing, like making a more simple way to talk about it. I think I see and this is the reason I wanted to become a consultant in the beginning, because I see so many businesses who are doing so much, but they're not talking about it. And the customer doesn't really know how they are different from business as usual. So excited about trying to help that clear communication with a new project. So exciting. Now I am drinking something really exciting right now, and this is a new find for me. I went to a pop-up shop yesterday. Now I'm trying for the first time. This is a game changer in terms of sustainability and coffee. This guy, Yuya Roast. Yuya is going to be one of the guest speakers at my next Seeking Sustainability event in January. And I don't know why I said that really weird. January. January. Yeah. He started a company called Yuya Roast, and he does direct trade for his beans. But now he's starting to mix, now get this, rice. Genmai rice he's roasting and mixing with beans to use Japanese rice, which is something we have enough of all the products in Japan. and organic Genmai rice mixed with direct trade, fair trade coffee beans.
Yeah.
So it's cheaper because you're using a local resource. And the coffee industry around the world is now panicking because there just isn't enough sustainable coffee production, right? So I'm drinking it right now. I have to tell you, I don't really notice a difference with regular coffee. Yeah, it's a real game changer. I was really excited for him. And because he's been talking about it so long, when I went, and I'm really excited. He's like, yes, someone's excited. Good, because this is new. This is like revolutionary, right?
Fantastic. There's a lot going on in the coffee industry, I think, that's really interesting. We did a huge project this year with a Japanese coffee maker. It was one of the top 10 in the world, and this was their first ever foray into sustainability, which was interesting. And one of the issues they were talking about really was, sourcing beans, ethical, environmentally sound beans, because obviously the supply is not that great at the moment. And it's one of those industries where there are huge, they're very, very impacted by climate change, of course. Coffee, plants are very sensitive to temperature, particularly temperature rises and stuff. But also the labor issues, sort of unfair labor, etc. In many coffee growing areas of the world is a huge issue. So there's really a strong drive to look at, what can we do about that? So we spend a lot of time researching, different potential sort of sources of ethical coffee. But another thing that came up was, and I'm trying to remember the exact phrase for it, was it molecular coffee? Have you heard about that? No? So this was coffee, but produced not from coffee, if that makes sense. It's a coffee substitute, I suppose. But there are a lot of companies working on this where they've been sort of taking the essence, like in a lab, taking the essence of what the bean is and what the taste is, and then looking at how they can recreate that with other things.
Isn't that interesting? So similar to what they're doing with Beyond Meat.
Yes,
right?
yes,
Taking the
exactly that.
essence of that protein.
Yeah.
And recreating it in a lab.
Right. Yes. So exactly the same process, but applied to coffee. I'll try and find some info on it for next week because it's a really interesting space. And obviously,
molecular. You said?
Sorry. Possibly molecular.
Okay. Yeah. We'll find later next week. Yeah.
Yeah.
But speaking of coffee, in the event, I did a SDG seminar at the beginning of the event last week. And one of the examples I gave was a Japanese company called Hapoen, who is using the SDGs as part of their clear communication to the customer about how they tie in sustainability to their brand and everything they do.
Yeah.
Even for imports. So it's really interesting about coffee because, of course, any coffee in Japan is not grown in Japan.
No.
So they talk about how it's connected to SDGs number 2, no poverty. Because they're doing direct trade and making sure that that business has enough money for growing coffee. It's kind of better than fair trade in some respects. But that was really exciting, right? To see Japanese companies who are using this clear communication, like we talk about, to make it easier for customers to understand how they're different from business as usual, which I think is going forward is getting more important, right?
Well, I think so, because a lot of the, through necessity, a lot of these products that are better sourced, more ethical, more environmentally sound, are a little bit more expensive because of the additional costs involved. So if you're asking a consumer to pay more, you need to have a really clear story for why that is, why you're asking for more. And to help them understand that, yes, they're paying a little bit extra, but look at the benefits of that, the impact of that. So that story really needs to be clear, doesn't it?
Definitely. So finding ways where we don't overwhelm the customer, and make it seem like it's too complicated. I can't take that in. So a simple way to communicate where it's good for the business, but it's also good for the customer.
Absolutely. Then they can make
going forward.
Choice. Yep.
Yeah, definitely. Another company I'd like to mention is Second Harvest.
Oh,
So
yes.
they're based in Tokyo. We were talking about food waste before. You can donate money, and I gave 10% of all the income I got off YouTube this year, and gave it to Second Harvest, and it bought like 75 meals, and so
Brilliant.
it makes you
Yeah.
feel really good about giving, like challenging yourself to give a certain percentage of the income that you get, and giving it to an organization which really does good for not only people by providing food to people in need, but also reusing that food waste, which is
Right.
almost at 40% in Japan. It's
Yes.
ridiculous, right?
It's really high. So it's tackling two really important issues at once with what they do. It's brilliant work.
Yeah. And you can donate money, but also if you're in Tokyo, you can donate time. So as
Yes.
a volunteer, they need people to help receive the excess food from supermarkets or restaurants and sort it out and get it to where it needs to be. There's also other kinds of volunteer activities you could do. So yeah, definitely check out Second Harvest.
Yeah, that's a good one.
Yeah. Another one I don't think we've mentioned yet, but one of my all-time favorites is Lush, of course.
Ah,
Lush is
yes.
fantastic, especially in Christmas time. If you go into any Lush store, and they're all over Japan, and all of the products Lush sells in Japan are made in Japan, right? And
Yeah.
they do have
Yeah.
to like source in ingredients from other countries, but I didn't realize that till a few years ago, and is so impressed. And they
Yeah.
have been doing so much with reducing packaging.
Mhm.
So even the plastic containers that they use at their store, if you collect 3 of them and bring it back, they'll give you a free face scrub, I think. And they
Fantastic.
basically don't do any packaging anymore. Like they just really want you to use your own package. They have embraced the furoshiki, right? So around the world, you can use their knot wraps, which is furoshiki, to wrap your presents, and they've got really cute things for Christmas. So definitely go uh,
Yeah.
be a patron of your local Lush store, especially at Christmas time.
Well, my son's requested one of their bath bombs for Christmas. He loves the bath bombs. They're
Yeah.
incredible. So,
Sometimes you need a bit of cleanup time after the bath bomb
yes.
because of all
Yeah.
the colors and dried flowers and everything in there, right?
Yes. Yeah, that's true, but they do smell fantastic, so Mhm.
Another one I came across, which is really interesting, and I hope my son's not watching because I'm going to try to get him one for his Christmas. Skateboarder, Japanese skateboarder, I read about on this website, Tokion,
Uh-huh.
and they did an interview with him. He has started reusing offcuts of denim from the denim industry in Japan and making
What?
Daruma
Out
dolls
of denim?
covered in upcycled denim, and it looks so cool. It's
Oh, they're
really cool.
brilliant.
So he doesn't have like a website where he's selling it, but he said if
Mhm.
you write him a message through his Instagram, let
Yeah.
me just show his Instagram here.
Aren't they wonderful?
Isn't that great? And
Yeah.
so his Instagram is a craft,
Mhm.
and he shows how he makes it, and aren't they great?
It's
So
wonderful. I think, yeah,
I,
it's
I
such
hope
a
they're
unique
I
thing.
hope they're not too expensive because I have asked him for a price list. But yeah, I love them. And my son is a skateboarder, so I'm sure it's
Ah.
something that he'll appreciate as well.
Yes. Yeah. No, that's wonderful, and a really unique gift and really interesting things. At this time of year, it's really hard, isn't it, to think about what can you get people and,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
you
And I
just
think I think we talked
yeah.
about it before, right? Like
Mm.
thinking about something meaningful, not just
Yes.
buying quantity, but buying
Yeah.
quality, right?
Quality, yeah.
Finding something that you really think somebody's going to like, and even if they don't like it, maybe they could pass it on to someone who would like it, or
Yeah.
can they use it for a long time, or could it be, if it's from upcycled something anyway, even by purchasing it, you're doing a good thing for the environment and people, planet, profit balance, right?
Yes, yeah, exactly. There were some wonderful examples at the Echo Pro that we were doing the chat from last Friday. So I wasn't able to show inside when I was there, but they had so of course there were all the big companies there, sort of showcasing sort of lots of energy companies. There were construction companies looking at sort of more environmentally sound ways of construction or materials for construction. But there was also a sort of a market kind of thing that had some really interesting kind of consumer products as well. And a lot of those were either upcycled or, made really locally using, really well-sourced ingredients. So there was clothing and bags made from upcycled plastic and upcycled fabric and things. So there were some really interesting options out there, actually.
Yeah, that sounds great. I always look for things which are upcycled or things which are promoting like a zero waste shopping style or something. And I was so encouraged yesterday, not only to find Yuya, but he was collaborating with a vegan curry maker who was also doing a little zero waste shop, and also a raw vegan sweets person. So all these young innovators, entrepreneurs, I get so much positive energy and hope from them for the future. It's so exciting. So I hope to have them on my show and help promote what they're doing even more to a wider audience. Because like I said before, I just think most people don't realize how special that is, how unique that is compared to business as usual, right?
Absolutely. Yeah. And I think, we really need to be looking out for these innovators, like you say, the young entrepreneurs doing stuff that's interesting and different, and really support them, because it's hard, right? Starting a business. We both know that, how do you get the word out there? How do you reach people? So I think anything we can do to help them with that is important.
Yeah. Another thing, since we talked last time, I don't think I talked about visiting a yuzu farm, did I?
You mentioned it briefly, but I don't
Did
think
I?
we've heard much about it. So, look at that.
So you can see in this picture, I am so happy. Like, it's beautiful weather. I'm at an organic yuzu farm. I learned so much about yuzu. I've been using it in my bath, ones that are a bit dirty. But I love that when we were visiting the farm, and he said, go ahead and pick it off. And there's big thorns. So we had to wear gloves and navigate around the thorns. He cuts out the middle of the trees so that he can get a lot of airflow, so he doesn't have to use pesticides or herbicides, because he found if there's more airflow, he doesn't get any pests. Mm-hmm. And then he said, take a bite. Have you ever eaten the peel?
Only very finely grated in stuff,
right?
But not just
the
biting
peel of yuzu, you can eat it, and it actually tastes pretty good. Yeah, it doesn't. Wonderful. It's not too. Yeah. I'm gonna keep this one for cooking later, but I do on my Twitter feed. You can see me biting into one, and it's really a surprise. Like, the inside is super super sour, but the outside, if it's organic, sure, you can eat the peel. Yeah. And I've lived in Japan so long where people don't usually eat the peel of anything, so right. It was really encouraging, right? Like, even grapes. Yeah. Have you seen people not eat the peel of a grape in Japan? Yeah. Or peeling them? Yes. Or apples, definitely not the peel. So it was really refreshing.
Yeah. No, I think we always freak our sort of kids' teachers out when we send them into school, with a bento with unpeeled apple slices, and they'd be like, hey, you eat the peel? Yes, where I come from, if you took the peel off, people would think you were crazy. It's just a very,
we have a lot of things, like you said last time too. When you buy bread in Japan, often there's no ends. Yeah, right? Or if you get sandwiches in the convenience store, there's no crust. Mm-hmm. So I think there's something about taking off the outside, which is very Japanese, right?
Right. Yeah. It's an I don't know where that comes from, but it's very interesting to me. And I'm curious about, particularly with the bread, where did the crusts go? I hope they're not wasted, but yes, I would imagine a lot of them are. So.
Yeah, yeah.
Mm.
A friend, I meant to mention the last time you said that, a friend of mine, when we were Jets, when we first came to Japan, we were always looking for ways to save money. And he found out that if you go to a bakery and you ask for the pan no mimi, the bread's ears, which is the ends of the loaf,
Yeah.
that you'll basically be given huge bags of crust for
Wow.
almost nothing.
Yeah.
And so he realized a really great way to save money, but also that's more sustainable because you're reducing the food waste, right?
Absolutely. That's brilliant.
Go
Oh, I like
ask
that
for
idea.
your pan no mimi in Japan.
That's wonderful. I didn't realize it was called that. All these years, I didn't know that.
Yeah, I just thought of that while you were talking about the crust last time.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
I had a really interesting talk at the beginning of this week with a female foreign priest, Buddhist priest.
Yes.
Victoria Yoshimura. So she is based in Miyazaki, and she's in a really beautiful area, Takachiho. And she married a priest who's in the line of priests in his family going back 400 years.
Wow.
And she became a priest herself. So that was a really interesting talk. Like, talk about the glass ceiling. There must be something else for the priesthood, but that was interesting.
That's fascinating. You don't hear of very many female priests full stop, and to have one in Japan as well who's non-Japanese is incredible.
Yeah. And continuing on the female power, since our last talk, I talked with Eremi Ray Heramusia, and she has started a business called Shacho Bell. And she was doing legal work as a paralegal for years, helping people with visa issues, and she still does that. But now she's taking her project management skills to help people create plans and follow through, kind of like career coaching. And so it was great talking with her. She's got a really interesting background, and she's really helping people put their plans to action. I think this is something a lot of entrepreneurs struggle with, right? You have these great ideas, but how do you make it happen? Right?
Yes. To be honest, I don't think it's just the entrepreneurs that struggle with that. Sort of thinking about the coffee company I was talking about earlier. The project we were working on this year was to help them understand, do the materiality process, to help them understand their impact, their risks, etc. But then to help them set goals and ambition around carbon, around ethical sourcing, and all of this stuff. But then, of course, having set those goals, and that was a long, slow process to get there, they then need to work out, okay, so how are we going to achieve these? And it's really hard, actually. All these companies now are talking about setting zero carbon targets, or sourcing targets. They're all coming out with saying the right things, but actually working out how they're going to do that is really quite tricky. So I think, for any organization, whether it's a sort of a one-person startup or these big companies, really mapping out that journey, having clear milestones, actions underneath those is a really, really important part of the process.
Yeah, definitely. Having someone also that you're accountable to, who you make a plan with, and then they check up on you later. Like, you need that. Especially, it's so easy to just give up and say, it's not working. Oh, but if my coach is going to check, I better make it work, or at least have something to tell her, know? And she really helped me recently doing government subsidy paperwork, which is so confusing. But she introduced to me that I might be eligible for some government subsidy for new projects. And so working with her was like a lifesaver.
Wow, brilliant. No, that sounds really helpful, especially, like you say, for the smaller companies. We might not know about these things that are out there. We don't have the resources of the larger companies with their legal department who can go and look for this kind of stuff and know how to fill it all in. So it sounds as though what she's doing is really helpful, particularly for the smaller organizations.
Yeah, definitely. So check out Shacho Bell. I'll put links below for all these.
Wonderful.
I also just uploaded a podcast with Felicity Tilak. Now, she is an amazing filmmaker. She is from Australia, but she is so good at Japanese that she wrote a screenplay and filmed and directed indie film, like a full-length
Wow.
film
Mm-hmm.
in Japanese with Japanese actors and everything, called Impossible to Imagine. And it came
Ooh.
out, I think, 2 years ago, but I just interviewed her and then watched the film. It was really, really
Mm-hmm.
good. I was very impressed. And it gives you an idea of what Kyoto looks like. It's like a modern Kyoto love story.
Yeah.
But she also is doing these really interesting short documentaries, like interviews with people in Kyoto. So
Mm-hmm.
she interviewed a guy who is running a really popular cafe called the Jam Jar. And he's just closed it after 5 years, but it's how he built
Mm.
community. He reutilized an old Minka Japanese style traditional like house.
Yeah.
And so some local Japanese people from the community also really loved coming in and
Mm.
taking in this amazing atmosphere that they grew up with, but it's
Yeah.
becoming less and less in Japan.
Yes.
So it
Mm-hmm.
was a really beautiful little documentary. She's a talented lady.
Fantastic. I'll have to go and look for that.
Yeah, so those were some highlights from the last 2 weeks. And then at the event, we had organic farmer Thomas Klepper, who was talking about composting and doing his farm. He does animals as well. So he has chickens and goats and sheep on his organic farm. And
Yeah.
he does no-till farming, which is a
Brilliant.
kind of a
Yeah.
different style of organic farming. Have you
Yes.
ever heard
Yeah.
of Fukuoka Sensei, who wrote the One Straw Revolution, the
No.
really famous book? So he had the idea that you don't need to till the soil, that you shouldn't disturb the soil. And so Thomas is kind of following on from that idea and just aerating. So his farm is pitchfork farms because you just put air in the soil, but you don't till it all up. And he was talking about the benefits of that. That was really interesting.
That's brilliant. No, I think that's really beginning to become quite a movement with farming, but also a lot of sort of hobby gardeners and things as well. I know my father's been doing this back in the UK and was, talking a couple of years ago about starting to do his no-till vegetable patch and so on. So yeah, it seems that awareness is really building around that.
Yeah, and if you haven't read that book by Fukuoka Sensei, it's amazing. It was a really interesting read. He was like an old Japanese guy, and he was really passionate about no-till and about growing food.
Hmm.
He asked elementary schools all around his area for the kids to collect all the seeds from their lunches, and then he would collect all the seeds and he would take it to Africa and make these clay seed bombs and just put them down and see what would grow. He was so inspiring. Like he was really amazing.
Right. No, I do remember now. You describing the seed balls. Yes, I do remember reading something about that. Amazing.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And we had another speaker, Michiaki Nishio, who designed this. It's like a puzzle, a wooden puzzle, based on the topography of what Hiroshima's rivers look like. And so he was explaining that. It's really interesting.
Mm-hmm.
He also knows a lot about, Miyajima Island in
Yes.
Hiroshima. So he knows a lot about how one of the old pavilions, Thousand Mat Hall, how the wood was repaired. So if you
Mm-hmm.
look at the old wood when you're there, there's some gourd shape repairs in the wood.
Yeah.
And so he was talking about what him and some other researchers think is connected to Hiroshima's history based on the feudal lords and how those
Uh-huh.
symbols have special meaning and stuff. So that was really interesting.
Wow, fascinating stuff.
So that catches me up. Anything else been on your radar? Any other events you've been a part of?
I think that's it, really. There was just the one event this week. It was just all a lot of client work in between that. I think it's coming towards the end of the year, and people are suddenly trying to wrap things up and get stuff ready for next year. So it's been very busy because of that. So in a good way, which is good.
Yeah.
But no, I think that's everything from me.
Oh,
for now.
good. So you can have a nice break, not too much work and
Forward to that.
leading
Looking
to the
forward
end
to
of the
that.
year.
Couple
Oh,
of bits
good.
are happening next week, but then yes, hopefully a bit of downtime Much needed.
Nice. Good. I did write a Medium article this week as well called Compost is My Christmas Wish. So in Compost, I talk about my experience, of course, visiting the zero waste town of Kamikatsu in Shikoku Island, where they're trying to sort into 40 categories for their garbage. I also visited San Francisco, and they have 3 different bins, and they're trying to compost and sort all their recycling, as well as reduce their landfill. But the biggest surprise for me was when I went to Victoria in Canada, and they do not incinerate or landfill anything.
Oh, brilliant.
Right?
Yeah.
So their strategy was you either recycle it, reuse it, or compost it. So, for me, that was the biggest eye-opener. And so I talked about that in that article.
Wonderful. Well, I look forward to reading that. So please share the link.
Yeah, I will. Well, that's our 30 minutes. So thank you so much, Tove. Thank you, everybody, for joining. Have a great weekend. See you next week.
Okay, bye.
Bye.